Hey y'all, what's up? Welcome back to Roots and Refuge Farm. I am walking into my backyard right now to get my linen off the line. It's actually just the very slightest bit damp, but I'm going to pull it down anyway because I need to put Lulu out back, and do not trust her to be out here with the clothes drying. She'll mess with them. So I just pulled in the driveway with my kids, and the light is so lovely and golden, and so I grabbed my camera and I was like, let's run out to the garden. And then Lulu came up, needed to go outside, and this sidetracked me. I figured I'd bring y'all with me. I'm gonna do this real quick. Not as fast as you're gonna see it, but still pretty fast. Line dried laundry has got to be one of my favorite smells in the world. It gives me life. Katie! Katie, we'll dance for dinner. Thank you, Ezra. Ezra brought Katie's dinner out. I just got something I'm super excited about. I hope it goes over as well in execution as it is going over in my head. I bought a push reel lawnmower. I just bought this. I just looked it up, read reviews, bought this one. And my plan for this was that I have this grass that's growing like in my high tunnels, in the rows is just grass. And I want to keep it grass. I just thought that it might be nice to have something like this that doesn't require any sort of fuel or anything like that to be able to keep that grass down. We'll see how well it works. I've had this romantic notion of having one of these since I was a child. I don't know, somebody's probably gonna laugh at that, but I don't know what it is. Read a lot of books, watched a lot of TV shows, I guess, that were kind of set in earlier times, and I've always thought those were really cool. And obviously they're probably not very feasible for very large spaces, but I thought it might be nice for like the walkways in the high tunnel and maybe some other areas around the garden. I don't know. Oh, look at this hydrangea. This is an incredible hydrangea. I went and visited my friend Matthew. It's been a couple years ago. Maybe he brought this one to me. No, I brought this one back when I went up there. Anyway, this is something he propagated off of another one. He just had I guess a little broken piece or a cut piece that he rooted. And look how beautiful it is. And then I actually got this butterfly bush from him too. And we cut it back to next to nothing every winter. But here's the star. The rogue driveway squash doing its thing. Watch this be like the healthiest plant I grow this year. And it's growing accidentally. I'm just gonna let it go because, you know, I can't help but watch this unfold. I'm a sucker for a wild and wonderful volunteer plant. So we're down to the last little bit of light. It's about 8:25 or so in the evening. I love being outside right now, largely because it's getting to the point that throughout the afternoon it's so miserably hot, and being out here where it's actually comfortable is nice. But the golden light and the croaking frogs, they don't hurt either. Look how quick these berry plants are getting established. We already have a few berries. So we got most of our berry bushes this year came in from Stark Bros. These were some I bought locally earlier, so they were a little bit further along. Man, they look great. I can't believe this. These are all thornless blackberry bushes. These are terribly sour. It's fun. Usually the first fruits off plants don't necessarily give you the best idea of what it's going to be like. Man, look at this. This volunteer tomato plant is monstrous. I always like to let a few tomato plants go so we can just admire their wildness. See? I love a wild and wonderful volunteer. Now all of these baby plants, there's blueberries. I did get some more blackberries. There's some figs, some raspberries. They're all in here. And they've grown a ton since I got. I'm very excited for what this space is going to produce when it's all established. I like that they're also just like random peppers growing. This compost came from animal bedding, composted, and garden clippings, so it's got a lot of volunteers in it. I'm going to be able to make just tons of jam, tasty things out of this space. That's thrilling. I've never grown enough fruit to really do a lot of preserving. It's always been enough for fresh eating. Like at our old house, we had pretty good established blackberries, and we'd get some strawberries and stuff. But this year I actually made strawberry jam from our strawberries. I made a small amount of the bush cherry jam, which I actually ended up mixing that with, I think they're called silverberries, and something Will had, he brought some, and I mixed it to be able to make a little bit more jelly. But yeah, I mean, I feel pretty accomplished. And in the future, there's gonna be a lot. Let's take a quick look here at the garden. Y'all look at these. You know, I love volunteers. That's an okra. This is an okra. Now, these I probably can't leave. But all of these little guys coming up, these are all okras. I'm probably gonna leave the big ones that are off on the side because I just think that's cool. I didn't plant those. Those all volunteered, the cucamelons. And most of this I planted, but right here, this, I'm assuming, is a Kajari melon because that's what was here last year. But this melon that's growing up in the middle of the cucumbers, I did not plant this. I think that tomorrow will be my first squash harvest. They're all still a little bit small and skinny, but I think tomorrow I'll be able to pull them off. I feel like my garden feels just a touch behind for around here. Like I've seen a lot of people's gardens that seem to be much further along than mine. But I didn't plant early. Like a lot of people go ahead and plant out early, and I tend to wait instead of taking the risk. I don't know. It's okay. I just have a lot of empty spaces. They'll fill up quickly. They've got little seedlings in them. So here is my green stalk. I mended it in a recent video. I planted it with some tumbling and micro dwarf tomatoes, and they look amazing. So obviously my amendments were effective. These plants just grew a lot. They started getting nice and dark green as soon as I put them into it, so I feel pretty good about that. Somebody mentioned on my recent garden tour that I didn't mention basil, which I didn't. I just skipped over it, but don't worry. There's been plenty of basil planted. Actually, we need to go down to the other end of the garden so I can show y'all some things. I just feel like I want to stop and admire every single little angle. Speaking of things growing really quickly, the tomatoes have taken off since the weather warmed up. Just love an evening walk, don't you? It's so good. All right, here's the in-ground Three Cousins garden. And down on this end, I've got a few different tomato plants, just some large varieties with large tomato cages. So I'm playing around with some other growing techniques this year. Of course, I've got most of them on a cattle panel. But a couple of years ago, I had a tomato plant in a raised bed right in front of our house, like the first year that I was here. And it was the year that we got that contaminated soil, and like all my tomato plants got wiped out by that. And so that one tomato plant, I think it was a Cherokee Purple, my hairstylist gave it to me one day. He just had it and gave it to me. It was in a red Solo cup, and I threw it in that bed, and it ended up being like my lifeline for fresh tomatoes that summer because I didn't have success in growing them due to that soil. Anyway, I didn't want to prune it down to 1 liter because when you prune tomato plants, all right, let me finish the first thought before I start the second one. There's my little ADHD rabbit trail thing. When you prune tomato plants, you are often getting slightly less number of fruits, but much larger size of fruits that you get. So if you actually look at the volume, in my experience, it does come out pretty close. The thing is that if you live in a place with a lot of humidity, you may end up getting significantly less volume if you do no pruning because your plants may get diseased and die before you get a whole lot of ripe fruit. So the benefit of pruning is that you can plant a lot more varieties in a small space. It can help manage disease because of humidity and creating airflow and all of that. And you get a lot larger fruit. So it's very common the way that I grow tomatoes, and I've done videos in the past like outlining pruning and trellising and all of that. But the way that I grow them, it's very common for me to get at least 1 pound fruits, oftentimes 2 pound fruits. I've had them as large as 3 pound. That's unusual. That's like a really big tomato. So, but it is very common for me to get fruits that are over 1 pound each, because when you prune it down, you are getting fewer number of fruits. You don't have as many branches that set fruit, but they're putting all their energy into those fewer fruits. I've done it that way because I live in a really hot place. It's extremely humid here, and my previous garden in Arkansas was the exact same. However, you know, I like to experiment with letting a tomato go wild. If you leave it laying on the ground, you're going to lose a lot of your fruit to damage. But I'm playing with these tomato cages that are essentially built out of cattle panel scraps, just tied together to basically allow a tomato to grow wild, and then tie it up so that it's up off the ground, but it's gonna be really huge. And of course this takes a much larger footprint, but I'm very curious to see how this goes. So this is an experiment, you know, I like those. But here in the ground, all around this garden, this is all holy basil that has reseeded. And I haven't yet decided what I'm going to do here because I need to be able to get to these. But I'm thinking maybe I could let this place fill in. Down here, this was my okra row last year, and I'm actually putting that elsewhere this year. But this is so full of volunteers that I haven't wanted to mow it down because look at it, look. We've got giant peppers, we've got zinnias, we have sunflowers, there's some okra, there are some really big pepper plants in here. Look at this, we have an artichoke. This didn't volunteer, this was actually planted here. Look at that. Got a little baby on there. There's basil in there. I don't know. I probably need to mow it down before it becomes a snake habitat. But I got to figure out what to do with all this basil. I'm thinking I'm going to pot some of it up and let it get established in pots, take it to the farmer's market and sell it. I'm going to move some of it into more desirable places. And then, frankly, because I love a wild and wonderful volunteer, I'm probably going to let a lot of it grow and make a hot mess out of my garden. A delicious, fragrant, hot mess. I mean, it's everywhere. It's all over here. Did you chase those birds? Did you tell them? I almost hopped in the high tunnel and started showing you everything in there because I just love getting to show you all the garden. But I walked up here for a purpose, and I want to make sure that I get to it before I run out of light. Oh, look, a calla lily. It's open. It just pulls me in, sucks me in. All right, Bear, don't make those mamas mad. All right, look what we saw today. They're hissing to protect them. You'll see those babies? So I love this entire goose posse is all just like flocked up with their 3 tiny babies. They're hissing at me. There's another mama sitting on a nest right there. And then there's another goose sitting on a nest over in the corner. And then a duck sitting on a nest. So we've got quite a few babies in progress. That's how we ended up with so many in here. I need to actually get rid of some of these birds. But I wanted to show y'all this. Alright. I'm standing next to this peach tree, which has gotten giant. And it is covered in fruit. See if I can show you. There you go. It's got tons of fruit on it. It's very tall. Of course, they grow well in this area. This one is loaded too. I mean, these trees are probably like at least 12 feet tall. Look at that. There's another nest. This is actually an apple tree. It does have a couple of small fruits on it. It's called Liberty Apple. This was one that was kind of an experiment because I was told that apples really didn't grow well here. So we'll see. I don't think this isn't far enough along yet for me to say, oh, that was wrong. We'll just have to see what happens. It has become dark. So this is another peach over here, but they're different varieties. This one's not as full as the others. This is July Alberta. So these are all from our Stark Bros order like I don't know, we put these in a little 2.5 years ago. And they look pretty good. This tree's not as full, but I believe I'm gonna have a pretty good peach harvest this year. This is a pear tree, and I don't know, it's not looking great. A lot of times when I'm trying something new, and I know I don't have the capacity to like become an expert in it right away, before I start, you know, I mean, you can research a lot of things and really get your head around them and then start. Or you can kind of research it enough to know how to start and then kind of figure it out as you go. And that was sort of my go on the orchard, because we put this orchard in the winter that I was really, really sick. And it was just kind of a thing of, well, I could put this off until I felt more equipped, or I felt like I had more capacity, or we could just put things in the ground, see how it goes, and replace them if need be. And a couple of things that we've tried have died, and they, you know, they didn't work. Oh, I almost walked right up to this goose. Why are you so scary? Okay. And it was sort of that way, you know, like when we moved, I remembered how much analysis paralysis I'd had. I planted a couple of fruit trees in my old farm. They really ended up not being in great places, and they ended up getting killed. And then we found a big pear tree that was established next door to my mother-in-law's house, and ended up harvesting a bunch of pears to make jam out of. Or I guess it was pear butter that we made. But here I didn't want to put it off and then find myself 5 years down the road with no orchard when I could have had an imperfect but planted one. Some of the things in this orchard are going to be very fruitful this year. I think I'll probably end up getting a lot of peaches. I think I'll get a lot of figs. I have 3 fig trees out there that are already up to like right here on me. So I think those are going to end up probably producing a fair bit. I mean, not a ton, but some, but in the future years they will. And then some of the other stuff we planted, I'll just have to see, like some of them may just not thrive here. I like experiments, so I figured it wouldn't hurt to try. But overall, when I walk through there now and excitedly assess the delicious things we're going to get to enjoy this year, I'm glad that I dove in and was cool with planting an orchard, even though I wasn't in a place to do it in an ideal way. We have lamb's quarter growing all over the farm. Oh, I'm glad I grabbed my camera. I knew I wasn't going to have a lot of light, but I knew that we would be able to see some beautiful things together. So often on my evening walks, when I ponder just like the state of the farm and the things that are bringing me joy and the things that I really appreciate and I'm happy to see, it really brings me back to this place of like just being really glad to have let go of perfection. And just be thankful for the organic process of things, and be okay with mistakes, and be okay with things not being ideal. And also like realizing that even in unideal circumstances, like where I feel behind in this garden, but there are these amazing volunteers growing everywhere. I mean, that's really cool. And it just makes me really thankful. The process of growing food is so very humbling, because it's just so much older than any of us. And it works, and that makes me happy. Thank you guys for hanging out with me today. My camera is compensating quite a lot, but it's quite dark out here. I bless you guys. Until next time.